Okay, thank you for joining us this morning. A few more people are logging in, but I want to turn the meeting over to Patty Vitt from the Lake County Forest Preserves.
Good morning, everyone. I think there are a lot of people who are still joining in, so we'll just give them a few minutes. Before we actually start. But in the meantime, I guess I'm going to share my screen.
For all those just joining us, if you could put your name and affiliation in the chat, that would be great. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new people joining us. That's very helpful.
So we're going to use an app called menti.com or Mentimeter to kind of capture our prioritization today. And I have just dropped the link to Mentimeter down in the chat. The other way that you can get to it is just to go to www.menti.com and put in the code 74819089. You can just do that through the web, and you'll see as we go along that you'll see the series of screens and questions, etc. For each of the work streams and the tributaries that we've come up with, and you can prioritize as we go along. So if you can go to www.menti.com and put in the code 74819089 and follow along, that would be great. So we have about 28 folks here today. I don't see many other people joining us, so I think we're about there. I hope you all had a chance to look at the documents that were sent out on Friday. If not, go ahead and open them up and take a look. Really what Jim Anderson and I did was to take all of the Jamboard sticky notes that we had at our last meeting and try and organize them. And if you have taken a look at that document, then I'm going to just share that with you guys so you can see that. So basically what Jim and I did was to take each of the Jamboards that were put together at the last meeting and kind of group them together by themes. And you'll see kind of just these blocks of color. And that's basically how we went through each of the 10 work streams that we put together. Because they did tend to have general themes that kind of all worked together. And so let's go back up to this chart, which is also in a little bit bigger than I was hoping, there we go, that Jim also sent out on Friday. You can see basically the work streams were kind of matched up with what we're calling tributaries. So not only did we kind of group them together in these areas, we also tried to find ways of kind of just giving a name to each of the themes. There were a lot of overarching components that went across each of the work streams. And so those are kind of some of the important themes that emerged. And they're primarily dealing with communication and data sharing. So we'll spend a little bit of time maybe at the end trying to capture some of that and get a discussion going about what that actually means, what that might look like, and how we might accomplish that. But for today, what we'll do is really just look at these different work streams and try and prioritize the different tributaries. So let me go back and share the Mentimeter screen. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, please go ahead and put your name and affiliation in the Zoom chat. And then also, we're going to be using this app called Mentimeter at www.menti.com, menti.com. So when you get to that website, use the code 74819089, and that will get you to the app that we're looking to work on today. So basically, all we're going to do is work through kind of each of these work streams to prioritize them. And so if you go to menti.com and put in the code 74819089, at this point, you should have this in front of you, and you should be able to click on it and kind of prioritize using a percentage which one of these tributaries you think is the most important for us to focus on.
And then in descending order from highest to lowest. And also think about, what do we need to do first to do next? So if there's something that's on the list that makes sense to start now so that we can achieve the others, that's another point that you should be thinking about.
Right, so here, kind of on the invasive species work stream, education would be primarily public outreach and training. But it could also be training, that's really primarily outreach, because there's also training and licensing. And I see a few votes that have come in.
Lydia had a question if there was an other category for something that may have been missed. Should we put that into the chat?
Yeah, go ahead and that's a great idea. Go ahead and put that in the chat. We're just here trying to capture what was actually on those jam boards. Yeah, so best management practices. Yeah, the cooperative weed management area. And if you aren't familiar with any of these in particular, feel free to turn on your mic and ask any questions that you might have about any of these, although I do think they're pretty straightforward.
And
So
if you prefer to just put on your mic and comment about something, I can also capture it in chat. But if not, just type it into the chat, and we do want to hear what are we missing, or what could be combined, or we do want, some of you are new to this process and haven't seen this before, so please let us know if there's something that is really important to this process. Okay.
Yeah, and if you think that there's something we haven't captured kind of in this distillation, take a look back at the Jamboard document and see if it's there, and we just haven't managed to bring it in to one of these categories. So let's see, there are 36 people on the call, and right now we have 22 responses. So looking for a few more. We really want to, capture the largest sense of the group that we can using this process. And in, another couple of minutes, then we'll go ahead and start the countdown to end the vote. So we'll give it just another minute because there's 23 responses and now there's 38 people on the call. So we don't have responses from everybody yet.
Hello?
Hello, did you FaceTime me?
I must have did it by accident. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I thought you were gonna show me your floors. That's all right. Have fun at work. You look good.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so if you're not quite sure how to participate, let's see, I'm going to copy the link again and put it into the chat.
It's also at the top of the slide here. And you don't have to have a +10. You can type in a number there to give its importance, or you can give something. I think you got 100 total points to use on this.
Yeah.
So we may not have caught that, but I think we did. This is a good reflection of good ranking. So that's what we're trying to do, is just get a ranking of these things. And there's a lot of things that are underneath these things, that include other information. But if you have ideas or comments, please put them in the chat. We want to collect those and make sure we're capturing everything that you're thinking.
Yeah, so basically each work stream has exactly the same setup, and the ideas behind them they were put into this Mentimeter poll basically in no particular order. So at the end of the day, we'll reorder those tributaries based on your responses today. So let's go ahead and move on to the next work stream, which is prescribed fire. And again, if you want to vote, go to www.menti.com and use the code 74819089. I sound like I'm at a telethon or something, but it is important that we get kind of what you are thinking about here. So just a few votes at this point. And if you have any questions about each of these things, go ahead back to that document that got sent out on Friday and look at the Jamboards to see kind of what each of these are trying to capture. Oop. That should be collaborative burning opportunities.
I think the Halloween is trying to get in there.
Hey, Jim and Patty, this is Ryan London. This topic came up in preparation for our annual meeting for Prairie State Conservation Coalition. We're going to have a roundtable at our meeting in March, but we are hearing from some other land trusts that their insurance for burning is starting to be capped, like a certain number of events per year. So I'm wondering if we want to capture that. I know we have a lot of municipal and governmental organizations on this call, but for us in the private sector, just the risk management component is starting to become a challenge.
This is Lisa from ILM, and our insurance limits our prescribed burning projects to 10% of our annual income.
Wow, that's pretty tight cap.
And we're starting to get like referrals from other companies that are deciding not to do it anymore because the insurance is so prohibitive.
So Lisa, is that your general insurance company, or do you have specific burn insurance?
I don't know. I think it's just our general insurance company.
It would be interesting to find out who your insurance company is and have a discussion with them. Why, you know, I know why they're doing it, and it's got nothing to do with us. And you know, FEMA just changed the way it's doing flood insurance based on the value of a home and the risk that's involved and the payout. So if we're less, then realistically we should be paying less. So Lisa, 10% of your annual income, is that like you can do 10 burns or 20 burns, or do you know?
Well, it just depends, you know, I'd have to dig deeper in to get you more information, but it actually just had our prescribed burn training internally on Friday, and you know, Keith, the owner of our company, brought that up. So I'm assuming it would be based on last year's income, and you know, it could be 2 huge burn projects or, you know, 20 small burn projects. It depends. But, you know, obviously if we're doing a prescribed burn, you know, in a residential area with vinyl siding, the risk is higher than if we're, you know, out burning at midday winds. So I don't know if they weight that or if it's just an across the board number, but I can dig into it a little bit more deeply.
Okay, that would be great, because it would be good to know, to inform the insurance company. You know, we have a what's it called, a regional wildfire urban interface plan, and so, you know, I don't know if you have a copy of that, but we certainly could share it. It needs to be updated, so if anybody would like to do that, that's one of those things that I think the Burn Task Force and the Fire Council could take on to get completed, so that that report is done, because that indicates to us the possibility of sharing that with the insurance company, and they would see that we have a lower risk. So yeah, that would be great information.
Okay, yeah, let me dig deeper and I'll get back with you.
So voting for this particular work stream is going to be finished in about 30 seconds. We have 29 responses. So Again, I put the link in the chat just a little while ago, or you can go to menti.com and put in the code 74819089. Great. Thanks, everybody, for voting on this one. Let's go to the next work stream, which is oak ecosystems. What do you think is the most important to least important priority that we should be considering as a way of focusing our efforts?
Also on the workstream tributary page, you'll notice that down at the bottom, we had a sort of who's going to be in charge of this, kind of the coordinator. And I think this one is very logical. Even the Oak Recovery Plan even talks about the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative implementing that plan. And all of these things kind of fit into what Lydia and her team has been working on in the past, I guess 5 to 10 years. I'm losing track of time. But again, if there's any other discussion about anything that we think we're missing or that should be documented, please add it to the chat or unmute yourself and add it, because we're really interested in making sure that we're going the right way. Because out of this, we really want to make an overall plan for the Natural Resource and Science team to report back to the Executive Council of Chicago Wilderness and the Steering Committee.
So we've had a few people join us just in the last couple of minutes. Just to catch you up, we're looking at the work streams of this team and trying to prioritize the work. And we're doing that using Mentimeter, and the link for the voting system is in the chat if you need to do it. And there's also, if you have just joined us, please go ahead and drop your name in the chat, your name and affiliation. So I think we'll go ahead and close out this one. We've got 29 responses. That's great. Thanks so much. We can see where everybody thinks we should be putting our effort and focus. But you still have about 40 seconds to enter a vote if you want to make your voice known, your thoughts known.
we should be able to get at least 30 people, 37 people. Your input is very valuable, and it may not seem like it's going to make a difference, but it's, you know, it's important to, this is a good way of collecting information, and we want to make sure that we have your opinion and input.
Okay, we're done with this one. So remember, if this isn't, this system isn't capturing kind of what you are thinking about, if there's something that hasn't been brought to our attention, hasn't been added into this, please go ahead and drop it in the chat. We are recording. And so we're also kind of trying to take notes, and we will use the things that are captured both in the Mentimeter poll as well as in the chat to try and prioritize the different work streams for this team. And for those of you who may not have been to the previous meeting, what we did in the last meeting was basically to essentially go over the same different categories, the work streams we're calling them, the things that this particular group is focusing on, and throw up all of the things that we weren't sure were being worked on, or we thought needed more work and more attention. We wanted to share with each other. And those were put on little sticky notes in a system called Jamboard. Those ideas were captured and kind of distilled into this poll so that we could try and figure out what your priority was for each of these tributaries under the work streams of this group. And that's kind of what we're doing now. So for the urban tree canopy, we've got 15 votes. That's great. Sure, we could get a few more. And if you're not sure how to access that document, there is a link to it up in the chat. Laura put one, it's on a Google Doc, and Laura did put that, did drop it in. She also dropped in the link for this Mentimeter system that we're using for polling today. If you're not sure how to grab a link from the chat, you can just go to menti.com and put in the code on the top of the screen, 7481-9089. We're getting a few more votes. I'm going to give it one more minute till we move on to the next one. And Laura did just drop a new link to that Google Doc in case you haven't been able to access it. Great. Thanks for your responses on this one, everybody. So the next one is kind of a big one, climate adaptation. Really a lot to distill here. And again, we just have a new person who dropped in. If you were trying to prioritize kind of the focus points under each of our work streams using this Mentimeter interface. So if you go to menti.com and put in the code, you can join in the fun. I did drop the link into the chat. So there is a comment that the choices for climate adaptation seem similar to each other. I think there are probably some similarities, especially between ecological sustainability and maybe healthy landscapes.
When you look at all the Jamboard ideas,
Yeah.
there are some specifics that are stated there that probably would, I guess we were trying to come up with good terms. And so I came up with these terms, and I don't disagree that there is a lot of similarity, but I think ecological sustainability probably fits over nature-based solutions and healthy landscapes, but it's all, it could be about the accountability, the documentation, where healthy landscapes is really about, all the land management agencies and land trust doing their work. Then nature-based solutions is really about actions that are really targeted at taking care of ecosystem services. So there are a little bit different, and the ecosystem services carbon sequestration is all about, can we get a market value for that? So they're when you look at the Jamboard and put them together, you can see some distinction. And so these are just titles, and this whole thing all fits under climate adaptation. And we're not talking about avoidance, which I listened to a webinar recently, and they weren't even talking about avoidance. They were just talking about how to make insurance right for people who flood along the coast. And it's just like, well, the best way is to get them out of there so they don't ever flood again. But so all of that is kind of put into this title. And when we start working on this work stream and the tribs, we can refine this. There's opportunities to do that.
All right, I'm gonna start the 1 minute countdown for this one. We've got a lot of people have responded to this one. But they're all pretty close. I mean, and I think that's probably correct. We'll have to, I think with this one, we'll have to really maybe refine them a little bit more. And of course,
the other thing, Patty, is, we have a climate goal. And
Yep.
So a lot of this we need to, share with those folks. And I know Ted's here today, so I know Ted's interested in the results here. He's kind of taking the lead on the goal for the climate. And so, we will be making sure that we crosswalk this with all the rest of the goals to make sure that they're comfortable with it. But this is what the natural resource and science team is thinking.
great. Let's go on to the next one, volunteer stewardship. And this is, again, one of those work streams that has a good group of people who has been working towards this. And they probably have a pretty good idea of what they think the priority focal points should be. But we're definitely trying to capture everybody else's. I don't know about your organizations, but certainly for much of the work that we do here in Lake County, there's just so much that we wouldn't be able to do without volunteers. So they're just such an important piece of what we do. So there's a comment in the chat that empowering volunteer leaders should be its own tributary. I think that's absolutely correct. Something we definitely hadn't really captured. So we'll find a way to include that. Thank you. And again, if there are other things that people feel we're not capturing, we should definitely feel free to use the chat function. All right, so give this one another minute. We have 25 responses so far.
Hey Patty, this is Herb Sharpless. One of the things that I would guess in this set of responses, there might be a difference between private organizations versus government organizations, especially in the equipment area.
Yeah.
Because of funding. And I don't know if you can break us out into two groups, not in real time, but you might want to go back and look at that.
Right.
Because if you want to have more volunteers, you need to have training, and then you need equipment for them in many cases. And as a private land trust representative, I'm very sensitive to that equipment issue.
All right, I've captured that in the chat. Thank you. So this again reflects the kind of the overarching ideas for the Wildlife Task Force. And again, this is one of those groups that definitely has folks who have been actively engaged in a lot of these issues so far. So we're trying to kind of get a sense of the larger group where they think the focus needs to be. And again, here's where we're going to start to see this kind of idea. It's kind of all grouped together: monitoring, research, data collection, and analysis. This comes up across several of the work streams. And so much so that it is worth having a separate conversation about specifically this monitoring, research, and data collection. There is the CW Hub that is currently being put into, is being created. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, you should go take a look at it. It's really pretty good. And one of the questions that I have been having is, when I look at these kind of tributaries, is that a place where we can start to capture some of this? Is there another venue that we should be thinking about? There is an awful lot of monitoring that's going on across the region. There's a lot of research that's going on across the region. And this kind of data hub is definitely capturing a lot of that, but not all of it. Other things that people were talking about were, combined databases, regional databases, some kind of data clearinghouse. And again, the hub that's being built may be the way to share and process and acquire some of that data, but there may be other avenues that we should be thinking about as well. And so, oh, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Laura just put the link to the data hub up in the chat. So that's great. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the hub, please do. It is really worth spending some time looking through the data sets that are accessible there and seeing what's available, where the links are. It gives you a pretty good sense, I think, of what data can be shared, and maybe even a better sense of what data should be shared. And that's maybe some place where we start to do a little bit more work, prioritizing that and seeing if the hub is an effective way of sharing that data.
So Mark Johnston is, I think, was on here and he's listening in. And so he is from the Field Museum, is really sort of leading that effort with his hub. And I just want to take this moment as a steering committee member to indicate to you that if you've not visited the hub, please do. Please look at the goals that you're interested in. Please look at the content information that's in there. Please think about what's appropriate to illustrate, especially for the natural resource and science team. We have the healthy landscape goal. We have other goals that we're involved in. And if there's anything that you feel is important that should be added to that hub, or a suggestion, please feel free to contact myself, Patty, Laura Riley, or Mark Johnston. We really do want to have input on this. Mark and his team have done an excellent job of pulling this together. And, in the long term, Mark envisions you being able to enter data and information to this hub, and then someone would play quality control. But realistically, this is to keep track of the goals of Chicago Wilderness. So this is, and in there, we could have a monitoring, research, data collection, and analysis site that we would be working from. So to be thinking about all these particulars that in these tributaries, and even the things on the Jamboard, and how they might be illustrated with the hub. And so they're looking for input. They're looking for not only information, but how do you like using it? Is it easy? Is it functional? Things along that line. So I just want to put that spin in there, because the hub is moving along and it's out there, sort of in a draft format. And we really do appreciate any comments you provide.
Thanks, Jim. So this next work stream is looking at the CW priority species. We obviously have a really good final list for the animals. We kind of listed some of those up there, maybe a few others that hadn't been thought of when that group was put together. There was a suggestion in the last meeting that we needed to confirm and finalize the plant priority species. So please go ahead and indicate what priority you think each of these have for the priority species work stream. And then Laura also just put in the chat that CW is building out team pages for each area that will be linked to the hub and the CW website. If you have links for resources that can be shared, please send those links to Laura. Eric, did you have a comment or something that you wanted to bring up here?
I did. Good morning, everyone. As we keep kind of talking about both the last topic and this current topic, I think we have often come up with these excellent lists for priority species. We've been working on these things for decades, and in my opinion, my expert knowledge, 20 years. I've been working on this stuff for 20 years with many of you and the other forest preserves and the state agencies. I think part of the problem is I mentioned, put in the comments, is that a lot of times the state is so behind and underfunded and loss of people, and there's very slow movement when it comes to our abilities to be able to move forward on some of these great programs and projects, that we can't get the state's support from that. People change, the boards change. I'm talking IDNR, the ENT board, staff changes, governor changes, things along those lines affect the state at those levels. And my concern is that we have great programs that we've all been doing for many, many years, and they just tend to just sit and idle because we don't get that support from the state level. And in the meantime, that's 2 decades have gone by in my career that we haven't released things in appropriate, really great, high quality habitat or historic locations where they used to occur, but they don't anymore, and we've restored them and they're in great shape, but yet we don't have the ability to release them there because we don't have the proper permits from the state. So my point is, I want to help the state do that and be part of that program and help them with those plans. And sometimes we've been the state program because we've been doing them just in one small little tiny county. So that's not a hit on the state. I know it's not their fault, but I'd like to provide our opportunity because we're a very large organization in a very small geographical area that have a lot of expertise and knowledge that can help them get a lot of that work done. So I guess it's a statement. And I agree that the priority species should be put in place by all of us, those that are working on these species across the region. So I guess I'm offering our support in addition to my statement.
That's a good point. And, one of the ways that we could do that, Eric, is to think about getting more members of land management agencies sitting on the Illinois Wildlife Action team. That's where the funding comes in for wildlife species. My understanding, they're going to be adding priority plant species. Now, they won't be the same priority species that we have because they're going to be looking at plants that provide wildlife habitat. So some of those species overlap, but some don't. But, I really think that getting people on the Wildlife Action Team committee is one way to do it. And also to, that's going to help the state move along, which is, they're underfunded and short-staffed and trying to do a lot, but they're just overwhelmed. And so if we can get the federal government to pass the Recovery Act for the wildlife, that would be a big boost to all the IDNRs and IDNRs, WDNRs. So
Agreed.
I'm gonna go ahead and close the voting on this one in just a shorter period of time. It looks like most people have weighed in on this particular one. Got about 20 seconds left if you want to make your voice known on where you think we should be headed in terms of prioritizing priority species. All right, the Grassland Bird Group. And I would suggest here that we've had this Grassland Bird Group that's been quite active for a while, but I think it's maybe just bird group, not necessarily grassland only, that we should be thinking about here. The Grassland Bird Group has been quite active and has done a lot of collaborative work, but there's also just so much more that needs to be done in different habitats, coastal habitats, et cetera. So I guess we can, when you're responding to this one, I think maybe don't necessarily think about it just in terms of grasslands. Well, this one's really interesting. I think this is the first time I've seen such a strong first priority. In this case, it would be for habitat management for birds.
So I believe this is the last work stream that we have. And so when you click it on your Mentimeter, it's going to pop up and say, do you want to see the results? And you can have the results emailed directly to you. So you don't have to wait. And again, take these. If you got comments that come later on, please get back to us and let us know, and we'll move forward. We'll get all these tabulated, and we'll do an email blast to everybody in the natural resource science team, and get this information out there, and get make sure that we're going down the right the flow path, if you want to use another pun on the stream activity here. We would like to do that.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that occurs to me is, is there a work stream that we're really missing? We're all engaged in so many different kind of overarching working groups and themes and thoughts and priorities. But we have these 10 established work streams. But is there a larger theme or a larger, whatever that we are missing? If you think that's the case, please drop a comment in the chat and just let us know. And again, if you think that that our prioritization scheme for is missing something that came out of those jam boards, also please let us know. There was a lot going on in those jam boards, and we tried our best to kind of distill them into kind of these larger themes, and then present that to you today. So, and then I guess there were, as I said, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share again. There we go. I'm going to go back to this overarching work stream and tributaries. This is exactly where these Mentimeter polls came from. And there's a couple of things that I think are really important to point out. Down here in blue at the bottom of each of these work streams, you can see that we have some of these work streams have champions, as Jim likes to call them, who are already working on each of them. But there are others that need folks to really to step up and maybe take on a little bit more leadership in terms of getting them to work. And if we have these priorities, these tributaries that we've just finished prioritizing, if we don't have people who are kind of helping to focus Chicago Wilderness and this particular team in making those, kind of the flow actually flow through this, then we won't get it incorporated, and prioritizing it really doesn't do us much good. And so the work stream for invasive species, the one for the climate adaptation and ecological research and data, as well as priority species, those groups really still need folks to step up. And so if you have the bandwidth, the time, the energy, the passion to start working on some of these groups, please let us know so that we can, kind of start working with you to, figure out how the regional, folks are actually working on some of these things, how we can bring them into this process, how we can work collaboratively to grab some of that data, et cetera, that is so important to our understanding our efforts. And from the working group that we had in September, August, I guess it was, these two things, overall communication and information sharing, as well as data availability and accessibility. Those were the two themes I think that came up in each of the work streams that I think we need to continue to think about. And this may or may not be a great time to address those, but I do think it's important that we be thinking about them. And I think that there, and maybe try and capture this again in the chat a little bit. People were interested in increasing communication and information sharing. And so I guess I'm interested about how we should do that. Is it through more emails? Is it through, additional meetings or more more scheduled meetings, kind of having a standing meeting? Certainly one of the things that I'm interested in doing is ensuring that each of the folks who are interested in these different work streams, that we have kind of periodic meetings over maybe the next several months, just to try and think about the priorities that we have all just set, and how the folks working across the region are already meeting those. And if they're not, how we can communicate what those priorities should be and how they might be addressed. So I am not entirely certain what the best way is of kind of trying to increase the communication for this particular group. So if there are any thoughts, I think it's important for everybody to have an opportunity to share what they mean by communication and information sharing.
This is the time that you can unmute yourself and say whatever you want.
Yeah, I know we're not a shy group, so please. You know, I guess I would say that for a really long time, I did not know a very good way of becoming involved with Chicago Wilderness and this group in particular. I didn't know exactly how to do that, even though I thought it was really important. So this is one way, but certainly, you know, reaching out to our colleagues and bringing them in, talking to them, finding out ways to communicate, I think is just really important. And finding the people who are out there and want to be more involved, think that this is, you know, just such an important process. I think we all need a little bit better way of communicating with each other. You know, it could be a listserv, it could be something else, but that's really up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Nancy Williamson and Steve Byers, and we are very impressed with this presentation, with your presentation of it too, and with what you and Jim put together. This was very understandable and
allowed us to prioritize.
Yeah, and a very good way to do it. So thank you for your work on this.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it came across really well. It's important that it does.
And you obviously have a very good handle on technology too. So
well, that also is becoming more and more important, I think. And I think technology can become our ally in terms of creating ways of continuing to stay in contact with each other.
This is Sarah. I'd like to echo what Nancy and Steve just said, and happy October, everyone. But Jim and Patty, this is really helpful. I think, you know, all of the methods, Patty, that you mentioned, I think are helpful. And I'm still struck by the fact that it seems like in-person, outside conversations while walking and talking and looking at what people are working on, I'm still struck by how helpful those are. Nothing seems to replace that, but all the other methods you mentioned sure are beautiful supplements. That's my opinion. Thanks.
I agree. I love outside walking meetings. They're the best. And fortunately, we're coming to a point where we can start having those again. And I think I'll take this moment to make a plug for the Grassland Restoration Networking meeting. That we're trying to get that one in person again this year, and lots of folks are working on that. So that at least can be one opportunity next spring, summer, sometime. I don't think we've set the date yet for that, but at least that one we think will be in person sometime within the next year. So we'll have that opportunity.
And I just threw in the chat, you know, this group has really expressed the need to get back to the restoration roundtables that Chicago Wilderness used to do. And I think it's even more important now that there are some really great success stories out there that we should go visit and find out how they're doing, find out the new ones. Hackmatack is a really great area, you know, what's going on there. You know, going back to Midday when finding out about the national park that's at the dunes right now, what's going on in Calumet. That's a big effort. The Ramsar wetland up in Lake County and into Wisconsin is another effort. Palos Hills, excuse me, down in Cook County is another place that we could go visit. So there's a lot of them, and we would have to set aside time to have one a month. But I think they really do allow us to find out what everybody else is doing, what's working, what's not working, and what are the results. Our Southern Des Plaines project is really showing a lot of forward progress, but it's also has illustrated a couple of things that we didn't expect that are making us go back one step. But those things are all important. We also want to think about using these kind of opportunities. Patty, myself, and a couple other people have been having discussions about collecting ecological data around the region and how to think about where we can capture all of that, how we can share it, what are the mechanisms out there to collect data. And so we've been talking about that effort, and I think within 6 months we might be having a good opportunity to have a webinar to talk about those things. If there's other things that you think we should have a webinar on that, or a subject, please let us know, or let Patty know. She's going to start taking over the natural resource and science team. And I think Eric Knighty had also agreed to help Patty out. So I recall that. And so I'm going to hold Eric to his word. And other people who want to get involved, there is no limit to the number of people who can help steer this effort. And the natural resource and science team, it's here today. Not everybody could join us, but there's a lot of us. And so let's keep our thoughts going, keep that communication open, and figure out ways to do it. So let's go from there. And so I do know that Mark Johnston has an item to discuss. So if nobody has anything else to add at the moment, we can certainly let Mark present what he wanted to for another colleague that couldn't be here today.
Anyone else before I jump in? Okay. Yeah, so one of my colleagues, Nigel Pittman, wasn't able to join us today, unfortunately, but he wanted us to briefly talk about a paper that he's working on. I'm actually helping to co-author, but he's the lead author. And it's all about iNaturalist. So we have, over the last 10 years, from 2011 to 2020, we have over 600,000 records specific to the CW region. So the paper is really about figuring out kind of the when, what, where, who, how, kind of for the whole region of what we can, how we can describe this data set. And so I'm calling it to your attention in case anybody wants to be involved in kind of reading over the manuscript and taking a look at it. But we have those 600,000 records. We're also getting about 250,000 records every year. So this is something we also want to think about how we can use this, leverage this data set that continues to come in year after year with that many records. Let's see, he gave me a couple talking points here. So let's see, the other part of our project is focused on understanding how iNaturalist is currently being used by the CW partners and how it can be used better. This part of our analysis is organized around the 7 green vision goals. So for example, in goal 1, we've identified the following ways in which iNaturalist can give or has given important biological information to land managers in the regions. And so he talks about, there's been bioblitzes that people use iNaturalist for, so like at Big Marsh and Riverside. There's projects to track biodiversity in managed lands that TNC has done. Projects are used for things like tracking invasive species. So Chicago Park District has done some of that. And then there's also observations of threatened species used to support campaigns such as the Bell Bowl, prairie that's you've seen in the news probably recently. So anyway, we'd love to get feedback, and if folks are interested in getting an early look at the manuscript and kind of helping us with your comments, reach out to me. So it's just mjohnston@fieldmuseum.org, and I can drop that in the chat. But yeah, I think that, unless there's any questions.
So Mark, I just want to let you know that Chicago Botanical Garden with Greg Mueller and Kay Havens are also looking at iNaturalist data and how it's being used from a diversity and inclusion point of view. So that's another thing that they're doing. So I don't know if you want to team up that person that you have with them and find out what they're doing. We met with them earlier this late September. And so they're just starting to think through their process of getting started. So it might be good to team that effort up.
Do you have a contact in mind, or someone?
Greg Mueller or
Greg, you said Greg Mueller. I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah, or Kay Havens are the two people that I spoke to.
Okay.
They got people underneath them doing the research, but they're the coordinators, I think.
Excellent.
So, we've got about 16 minutes, and I am very willing to open the floor to anything else that people have, any announcements, any observations. Are we going down the right path with what we're doing? I know two people said we've done a pretty good job, but this is two of us steering it, and I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable where we're going, but also very happy to hear anything else about the Chicago Wilderness or your firm, your agency in the region. So the floor is open.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I joined late and my computer has been freezing up on me, but thank you so much for organizing this, Patty and Jim. I second that it's really exciting to see so much activity here. And just on the Chicago Botanic Garden side, there were two things that maybe have already been discussed since I started late, but one of them is, and what Ted mentioned, is the overlap with other groups. I've been working on with the group 5, the goal 5 nature access team, where one of the topics that we're discussing is training, increasing opportunities to access training to continue on a career in land management and natural resource sciences. So I think I didn't see that in the watershed and tributaries. I'm not sure exactly where it would fit, but I think there's a direct connection with some of the work that we're doing with Goal 5 there, and some of the work that we're doing here at the Botanic Garden to transform our natural areas technician program into an intern program that's really focused on jobs training and increasing equity and diversity and inclusion in the field. So just interested in continuing a conversation kind of in that space, maybe in future meetings, and linkages with Goal 5. And then I also wanted to mention that I have grad students every year looking for research projects that are meaningful, that have folks that are really interested in figuring out what's going on out there. So a few years ago, we started just asking folks what their research priorities are and trying to compile them in a list. That's the link in the chat. And it's out of date for some things. And I would love to be a part of conversations to figure out how we can identify where the research priorities are, who's interested in them, and then how to tackle them as a group. And then of course, continue to manage and share data to help move things forward. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to make sure that I made. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. That's great. Actually, that's excellent. I love the opportunity to weigh in. Of course, there are lots of research priorities, things that folks in land management are always asking, why is this working, or why isn't this working? So that great to have a kind of a clearinghouse where we can make those priorities known. Ted, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. Morning, everybody. So a quick announcement. In 2 weeks, the Climate Committee is basically having our version of this meeting with our members. And we just relaunched that group after a couple of years. We had our first meeting a month or two ago. One of the things that we're going to be doing at this, viewing the give-get aspect of the community work, do that information sharing that we were just talking about. And then the other planning thing that we're hoping to do is to separate into subgroups. So that's adaptation, mitigation, education, and the justice or people group that coordinates with that group 5. And start to think about what the goals are for each of those groups in light of this information sharing that that's why I'm here, right? Tweaking this stuff so that we can actually start to think about deliverables and how this works. So, one of the information sharing things I'm going to do is look back at the results. I've already emailed them to myself per Jim's suggestion, and so there's an opportunity there to think ahead to the next year or two, if folks are interested, and that's really what I wanted to announce, is that we'll have concepts and then we'll back out like, well, how long do we need for this concept? What do we need to do for this concept? That kind of thing. So if you're interested, please do attend, and I'm going to work on other goal group meetings to bring that information in. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ted. And I will try to attend that meeting too, because as somebody pointed out, there's clearly overlap with one of our climate work stream. So just for information sharing and making sure that those goals get at least some attention across the board. So that's great. Also, looks like, yeah, Andrea just put up another thing in the chat, another link. Andrea, you want to go ahead and explain that to everybody?
Sure. Sorry, I forgot. That was one of my other points that I forgot. We've just launched a new synthesis center to bring folks together. The intent is bringing practitioners and researchers together in the same space to identify what the priority questions are, both regionally, nationally, and internationally, and then taking up to 2 years to really get the data that is out there to then answer the question, or at least figure out how far we can get in answering the question before we realize we need more data. So it's a synthesis center. It's really supposed to just be synthesizing things, not collecting new data. But the goal is to just help keep moving science, practice, and policy forward. So the website's up there right now, and we'll be having a call for new projects sometime late next year. And then we'll have a postdoc who is always kind of helping to run those projects over the years, and then hopefully graduate students that also can get engaged in that. Thanks.
Okay, I don't think I see any more raised hands. Any other comments or questions, thoughts?
I would just let everybody know that Laura Underwood got a Fox River study put into the WRDA Act. And if you don't know what WRDA is, it's a government Army Corps process where they do a feasibility study of finding out what the issues and needs are in the watershed. As many of you know, Fox River has, as any watershed, has substantial flooding issues and water quality, water supply. And so this study will be looking at the Fox River study. So I'm keeping tabs on that so that when it gets moving along, that we make sure everybody that's in that watershed gets an opportunity to have input and make sure that it's meaningful. I'm pretty sure it'll be meaningful, but we want to make sure that they're thinking about everything that we're thinking about, from natural resources to access to equity to climate sustainability, all those things all wrapped in one. So that's one big regional study that I believe is happening, that I wanted to let everybody know that is currently out there.
Well, I think that probably wraps it up, Jim. What do you think?
I'm open for, we have 7 minutes. So if anybody else has a idea or comment or something that they would like to think about, how does the natural resource and science team integrate with other people? All those things are open for comments. So one last call, I guess. And if there is none, let's go on our way.
Great.
I'll just, one more thing, sorry.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Andrea.
So for that priority research question list that I sent the link to, if anyone has things that they would like added to it, we can either give you access, you can add it and keep it updated yourself, or you can just send me an email and I'll add it to that list. Right now we've got lots of incoming grad students looking for projects, or prospective students thinking about the kinds of projects they would be interested in. So this is the time to add to that list. If you have things, even just one question is great. And then back to that synthesis center project, I forgot to mention the project that we're actually working on right now. We're looking at, and I know Patty and Jim know about this, and a number of folks, Gabby is on the call and Lindsay, but we're looking at the impacts of rapid canopy loss on understory vegetation in oak woodlands around the Great Lakes region. So if you haven't seen our call for data, there is information on the website about that, but we're hoping to find any and all information on species level understory vegetation data that may be before and after canopy loss, either related to emerald ash borer or really any sort of canopy loss. And our goal is to synthesize whatever data sets we're able to find. And there are some really interesting data sets out there to answer questions like, how does the management that took place before and after that rapid canopy loss influence the trajectory of that understory vegetation? Does it change the kinds of invasive species we're seeing? What kinds of species are coming in? And how is management modulating that? We're hoping we have enough data to answer those questions at a more fine scale, but I guess we'll find out soon what sorts of questions we're able to answer. So if you have data, or if you're just interested in that project, we're always happy to have more of anything, more input. So more collaborators. Our goal is to have a paper come out of this at the end, and we'll keep sharing what's going on. The end will be sometime in early 2023, so we've got some time. But yeah, if you're interested, please let me know, or any of the contact information for folks on our website.
So Patty and Andrea, is our Sunland Des Plaines project included in that?
Yes, they've got that data already.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but we've got CTAP, we've got McDonald Woods, Nishusa. There's some great data sets out there, but I'm sure we're missing some. It is definitely challenging to have more longitudinal data. So if anyone knows of any.
Yeah, I think both DuPage County and McHenry County would have a significant amount of data because they've been collecting it for a long time. And others, Julie, you're on here from Will County. Chip, you're on here from Cook County. It would be great to gather all that together. And, this ties back into the discussion that Patty, Eric, and I have been having. How can this is a great example of what we like to do is centralize all this ecological data so Andrea is able to access it right away. Or someone that wants to do a research, looks at our data. One of the things that the Forest Preserve did with Gary Golacki and our wildlife side is we started collecting data in a very systematic way. And after 10 years, we had a grad student come in and look at it, and he's like, this is the best data set that we've ever seen. And I know for a fact that DuPage, Will, Cook, all the other counties are collecting data in a very systematic way. So there's really good data sets, and we need to figure out how to pull those together. We're not asking anybody to change their protocols. We're just asking, share the data with us. If it's sensitive, we'll leave it out. But if it's information that we can pull together so Andrea or other students or researchers from outside the region can come in and ask those questions, I think it's like a gold mine that we have that we should be sharing with everybody, because then we get those research questions answered. If we don't have the data, we can't ask and answer the questions. So that's, Andrea, thanks for bringing that up. And I challenge everyone to think about this process. We will be getting back to you about the data sharing. If anybody's, has a database manager on their staff that would like to be part of the team, here I am recruiting again, please let us know. I know I contacted all the resource managers, and we will put that information together in the next release about who we think can be some of the champions for these groups, because those people are really going to be the ones that push those work streams forward. So thanks for all your time today.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. I want to thank everyone. I put it in the chat, but if you have staff, particularly some of the younger staff that's working with you that may like to network and learn more about Chicago Wilderness, please send me their email address and their name, and I would be happy to add them to the Chicago Wilderness database so that they can start receiving information and finding about the work of the working groups and teams that we have going on through the Green Vision.
Hey, so Laura, you just reminded me to think about something. If anybody here is interested in serving on the steering committee for Chicago Wilderness, we are looking for people to participate in that process. So you can either contact Laura or myself. We're interested in anybody that wants to sit on the steering committee, which oversees the big scope of things. I sit on the steering committee, and we're talking about a lot of things. We're focusing on these goals. We're thinking about diversity and inclusion. We're thinking about 30 by 30, which we're going to talk about probably at the next session, about how the natural resource science team fits in the president's plan for 30 by 30. And so the steering committee sits up high, and I don't want to say high, sits overlooking and trying to coordinate all this stuff. And if you feel like you're interested in that, and even if you're young and new to the process, we would encourage you to think about it. It's a great professional development opportunity to be involved in that level. And there's really good people on it. Yeah, I'm one of them, great people. But yeah, we are looking for someone, and if you are interested, please let Laura or I know, and we will put you on the nomination list, and they'll contact you and get further information. So we encourage people to think about it. So, all right, I'm done.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.